Diane, I'm listening to a podcast, Black Lodge Trivia Night. I've never heard so many game aspirations in my life.
All right, welcome back to Black Lodge Trivia Night. This is Art, and we're here once again with some solo Strider mode for the One Ring 2nd edition. Let's just get into it. If you remember last time, we had some adventures in Annuminas. We sort of diplomatically struck out with the Vale of Gold, which is sort of an encampment of dwarves led by NPCs, led by Flonar. We had a little bit more luck with Thornmount, which is sort of an encampment of wardens who have kind of abandoned their posts, led by Hadant. And when I say we have inroads, it's because there were a couple of guys in there that didn't seem to be completely on board with what Hadant was doing by abandoning their responsibilities. But I was like, okay, so maybe I'll go into Annuminas, let me investigate what's going on. There's like warg attacks, there's a lot of activity going on that's relatively new. Let's see if we can piece that together and see what's up. And if I could find some of that evidence, maybe I could bring it back to these camps, and that might reopen sort of diplomatic channels, so to speak. So I went into Annuminas and snuck around, and I saw some orcs. It wasn't like it was, swimming with millions of them, but I saw some orcs, and their shields and helms were marked with a symbol, which was the mark of a two-headed troll. A lot of this is coming now from Tales from the Lonelands, because they provide some background and information about this area, and I wanted to take advantage of that where I could. That symbol, I was able to roll some lore, and what I learned was that symbol marks a band of orcs from over here in the Ettenmoors. Let me switch. I guess I can go to this map. The Ettenmoors obviously are way up here. We're all the way over here. So something brought this band to travel west and set up sort of like a forward post here in Annuminas. So that's the basics. So I was like, okay, I found out this information. Maybe this means something to somebody. Let me take it back to the camps. And when I was doing that, I stumbled across one of the people from Thornmount, one of the wardens from Thornmount that had sort of came to me on the side and say, I'm not exactly sure I agree with what Hadant's doing. Maybe I can give you some information on the side. And he had been attacked and killed by wargs, as was his horse. So that was a little tragic. And when we sort of found his body, we found on him sort of a sealed letter with sort of the signet of, or whatever it would be, of our patron, Gilrain the Fair, who is sort of the leader of the wardens. Sort of indicating that maybe he was still on the clock. He was still maybe he hadn't officially abandoned his post, so to speak. So I think it was meant to be sort of a symbol that, hey, this guy's official. So obviously I was sad. I'll be saddened by that, and we'll make our way back to, in here, we encountered a grave robber. We pulled up aside, saved him from the orcs, but then he ended up getting gotten anyway. So stuff like that happened within the city. But right now we're making our way back to, I guess I'll go to Thornmount first, because I found the body of this warden. I'll sort of relay the information of what happened, so they're not left in the dark wondering. So let's start by doing that. First, of course, let's do a weather check. We'll say it's, I spent sort of the night scouting Annuminas. So we're going to do a D10 check. Nope, don't want to do that. Okay, so we rolled a 9. So a 9 means that it goes down 1. Oh, we get some weather change. So let's move that down 1. So you can see, like, here in the 10 band where we are in the season of spring, it's actually freezing. So it's actually warming up a little bit. And then let's do a check for the wind. Again, it's a D6, and I do 1, 2 equals 1, 3, 4 equals 2. A 1. Okay. So Let's see. So it says the number range is the mean wind force. The GM can get a specific wind force by rolling 1d3. It says better yet, use discretion to gauge the actual wind force. Okay, that's fine. But so we can do like 1 through 3. So breeze, windy, gale, and I got breeze. So it's light wind. It's not that bad. So there we go. All right, so we make our way back into town. Let me make sure I have this. You can see here I've got the Oracle ready to go. It's kind of annoying when does it show up? Yeah, it gives you the thing up top. I'm using Microsoft Edge for this. Not important. I was having some really weird technical difficulties with Foundry, and so I switched browsers to see if that made a difference. And it seems to be working here in Edge. Chrome, I don't know if it was actually the browser though. But anyway, so you're going to get that every time I switch between the two, and I apologize. Chrome doesn't do that. It just goes between the two seamlessly. Yeah, I started recording, and then I was like, I just took certain things for granted. Like, mainly what it was is since we're heading back to Thornmount, let's bring up a map. And, yeah, it was dumb because what happened was I couldn't activate any maps. So, like, I went to activate a village, couldn't do it. I was sitting here, like, a couple minutes into the recording. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But, okay, so here we are. And can I just drag myself onto the map? I can. And if you recall last time, there were a bunch of... I think I just dragged some adversaries, right? I don't even know. It doesn't really matter because there's no pictures, but so I think I had the ruffian chief as well. You know what? I have a Hadant. I don't need to. So we have Hadant, and we have his crew. I don't remember how many there were last time, but you get the basic idea. And so, I come back into town, and maybe I picked something up from the dead body of the warden, the fallen warden, and obviously I picked up the letter with the signet, but am I using that word right? I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe I also grab like the clasp from his cloak, and I bring that as proof that, maybe there's something a little individual to each of these clasps, or maybe something would be a part of this clasp to help them recognize who it was from. And so I approach Adant, and, again, remember, like, they weren't as cool to me as the Veil of Gold, but they weren't happy to be here. Maybe there was some degree of confrontation because I'm still a warden and they're sort of reneging on that responsibility. And so Hadant sort of, comes out of his, I sort of make my way in, and I'm not trying to be quiet. So I'm, shuffling in, like, the noise, from my pack, as I move, and it sort of draws attention. And maybe like one of the, maybe it's the guy who, one of the two guys that, gave me some information. And I can, as he comes out of his, like, sort of his little hut, I can see there's worry on his face. And you know what? Let me do a roll. Is it awareness or is it insight? I think it's insight when it's sort of like a personal observation. So let's give that a roll. I got a success. So what I'm sensing is that he's very worried, but that he's trying his best to not show it. So maybe, yeah. Yeah, so that's sort of the look I'm getting from that person in particular. And then maybe a moment later, another one, paranoid footpad comes out, and he sort of gives a smirk, like he's back. And he goes, "Hey, Adant. Your noble warden is, back for more. And, a couple more come out and they're laughing a little bit, and I'm sort of standing there. And I sort of hold my tongue for a moment. And, eventually Adant makes his way out and comes down, or maybe it's from this building here. And he comes down. And let me just see something really quickly. And he comes down, and he sort of looks at me a little. That's what I'm looking for. And he sort of looking at me a little bit. And is, again, still a little smug, but there's some uncomfortableness there. Because, again, he doesn't quite know what I mean or what I intend. And he's like, you back to do, you want to talk some more, or what is it? And so I just sort of like give a light little chuck of the clasp in my hand, and I throw it. And he sort of quickly, he catches it, but he wasn't expecting it, so it's a little bit of catches it against his cloak. And he sort of shakes it out into his hand a minute, and then he sort of gets somber. He sees, and maybe there's a little bit of blood on it too. And he goes, all right. It's like, gentlemen, appears we've lost one of our own. And they all sort of do some kind of gesture for a moment. A somber moment of silence, so to speak. And Adant now turns back to me and he looks at me a little bit differently. And it's, where did you come by this? And so I look at him for a moment. I'm like, well, this is what I was trying to talk to you about before. Your friend, he fell to a pack of wargs, his horse as well. And everybody's like, sort of like that's a hell of a way to go kind of thing. And they shake their head a little bit. And I continue and I say, do any of you know what he was doing out in the middle of the night? Why he was on his horse? Why he was out in the woods? I was coming back on my way from Annuminas. And, yeah. And so Adant, looks at me and he goes, look, brother, I don't know what he was doing and I don't know why. We just want to be left alone. We're not here to get involved. We're not here to be a part of whatever crusade you might be on. We're just here to live our lives in peace, undisturbed. And so I look at him for a moment. I'm like, look, this is coming whether you want it or not. Maybe I decide this is the moment where I'm going to throw down a little bit. This is coming whether you want it or not. There's wargs at your gate and you've just lost one of your friends to this threat. You cannot escape what's coming. It will swallow all of Middle Earth if we don't do something. But even in your little corner here, you cannot escape it. It's coming and it's already here. And so he sort of looks back down at the clasp and, let me see if there's something here. It's a persuade check. I'm just gonna roll and see what happens. I got a success. I wasn't expecting a success. I've only got 1 pip in it. And, he sort of looks at me. I'm going to bump that up a little. He sort of looks at me and he's like, you're right. And he's like, and it's interesting that you talk about this because I don't know if there's a connection between the two, but, our friend's, disappearance last night sort of coincided with the arrival of a visitor. Around the same time. And I'm sort of like, wait, what are you talking about? He's like, here, come. And so I sort of follow him, say maybe into over here. And we go inside to this tent over here, like this little hut. And inside is a dwarf. Nope, that's not what I want. Neutral appearance, vision, light, resources. Yeah, it's sort of all these little things that you know, like you're getting a little peek on how this works, so you can go trying to figure out where I actually stuck. Stuck all these, you know, these tokens and all this stuff. It ends up getting, you can see like a lot of stuff, like, gets in there. So let me see if this actually works now. So there you go. So we've got Floki. I don't know his name yet, obviously. So I come into the tent and I see, like, you know, this dwarf laying on the ground, like, clearly bites and claw marks, and he's pretty gravely injured. And he's maybe half, I don't know, he's not out of it. He's not unconscious. He's half awake. And he's like, oh, another warden, thank you. I've been telling these gentlemen I owe them my lives. And I was like, you gotta fill me in. What happened? He's like, I was on the roads here. I thought I was gonna be quiet. I didn't expect, you know, to be attacked in these hills. They've usually been so, you know, maybe trolls, but not what came at me last night. Wargs, a few goblins. And so I'm like, wait a minute, so where were you? And he sort of tells me, you know, I was like a little bit to the east of here, and I start and there's like a pass in the woods, and he describes the location. I'm starting to realize that he was attacked roughly where I found the fallen warden. I'm like, okay. And I sort of look at his wounds, and I realize they're bad, but they're survivable. And it seems like the wardens here, you know, they haven't obviously forgotten their knowledge or their training, so they've dressed the wounds well. And so I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, so what became of the warden who helped me escape? He bought me time so I could get away. And I look to Hadant. You know, it's part of his tribe. So he looks at me, and then he turns back to the dwarf, and he's like, he fell. He's fallen. He didn't make it back. And you can see in Floki's eyes sort of this gravity, like, okay, so he, you know, the weight of knowing someone died so that you could live. And yeah, and so he sort of gets very solemn for a moment, and he's like, look, I'm very sorry for your fallen comrade. I wasn't trying to get anyone into danger. Like I said, like, usually these hills are quiet. I didn't realize this was happening. And Hadant is like, no. It's, you know, it's... And he sort of gets like, the first glimmer of that, he hasn't forgotten all of his duty, if that makes sense. Like, it's that first glimmer of like, this person fell doing what we're supposed to do as wardens. And so he's like, okay, it's starting to come back, that sense, you know. I basically what I'm trying to say is I think I broke through a moment ago, and I see a little bit of that spark there. So Floki, you know, sort of like closes his eyes, and he's like, well then, you know, I owe you wardens a debt I can never repay. And, you know, Hadant's like, it's okay. And Hadant's like, why don't you tell us, you know, why you're here, dwarf? And, Floki says, well, and he finally introduces himself. My name is Floki. I'm a dwarf from the Blue Mountains. We go back to here. The Blue Mountains are over here. So he hails from the Blue Mountains. He made his way east around here. And he said, I came to deliver a letter. I heard I heard word that my brother had been seen in this area recently. He's been out of touch for a while. We're not 100% sure why. So we wanted to reach out. I have a letter from our elders in the Blue Mountains, and I was supposed to come here to deliver it to him, and to see him and to talk to him. And with that, I'm like, oh, okay. What do you mean by talk to him? It doesn't sound like it's just here to deliver a letter. And Floki sort of tries to think about how to word it, and he says, well, he's lost his way a little bit, and that's been some concern of the elders of the Blue Mountains. And while I was here to deliver the letter, I was also hoping to speak to him, to sort of walk him back a little bit from the path he's been taking recently. And so he's like, okay, understood, but then he he coughs, and maybe a little blood from a wound kind of trickles a little bit. And he's like, but obviously I'm in no condition to, cross that last mile. And so I sort of step up, and I'm like, I can do that for you. I know you can, and it's like, is your brother? And I sort of describe Flonar, the one main. He's like, yes, yeah, that's him. You've met him. Is he well? And I'm like, well, yeah, he. And I sort of walk him through, like, there's the Vale of Gold. There's a camp that they're sort of getting up and running, and he's like, oh, it's good to know he's okay. I'm like, yeah, no, but I'll take the letter. I'll bring it to him if that will help. And he's like, yeah, that'll. And then every cough kind of hurts, and he sort of like clutches his ribs a little bit. He's like, oh, it's damn dwarves, And he's like, yes, that would be a tremendous help. And so I'm like, don't worry about it, dwarf. I'll take care of that for you. And he's like, thank you. He's like, I think I should rest. And then Hadan says, of course, we'll give you some time to rest and start to recuperate. And so we step outside, and Hadan looks at me. And he sort of says, the dwarf's right. And I'm like, how so? I'm not, I've only been here for a little bit. What do you mean? He's like, these hills were quiet, and I'm telling you, something's changing. And maybe you're right that we can't hide from whatever's coming, because, yeah, we came here to be at peace and to be away from it all, and it still found us. So, deliver this letter, and let's talk when you get back, and figure out, maybe there is something that we owe this area and something we can do. I'm like, okay, thank you. And so he's like, I'm going to go see to the dwarf's care a little bit more. And so he sort of steps back in, and people sort of break and go their own ways. And the other one that came to the camp a couple of nights ago to give me some information, I sort of like, hey, come here. And I decide I'm going to take a risk. And so from inside my cloak, I sort of pull out, not all the way, but just like a little bit, the letter with the seal from Gilrain. And he's both saddened and relieved. He looks at it and he says, may I have that? And I started looking at him for a moment. He sees that the seal is unbroken, so I haven't done anything with it. And he's like, may I have that? And of course, it was your friend's. It's not mine to. And he takes it, and really quickly he immediately throws it into the hearth fire, and it catches. The seal starts to melt, but the whole thing is engulfed in flames. And he says, Hadant can't know. He seems to have warmed up a little bit to you and to, his forgotten sense of duty. But that's a process that's going to take a long time. And if he knows that we were actually here on Gilrain's behalf trying to influence him back into the fray, he'll see us as traitors. And I don't know what that means. And I think whatever the repercussions might be for me personally, I don't know what that will mean for our task. It may forever fracture his sense of trust with the wardens, and we can't spare a single man. So please, I'll open up to you. I have one as well. Like, I'm here, and it is something that I'm hoping that if I ever needed it, it would save my life. If Hadant saw me as a traitor, I could pull this out. And if he didn't value my life, maybe he would at least value Gilrain and her status, her position enough to spare me. But please, don't tell Hadant you found this letter. Don't tell Hadant that I am in possession of one as well. And I'm like, okay. And of course, I'm not going to be like, I'm going to totally rat you out, bro. You cop? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sort of nod. Be like, okay, yeah. So with that, I sort of, make sure I, get everything I need, get it all situated, because I know I'm going to be on a bit of a journey. And we go back to Eriador. So I'm here in town, and it's about a day's march to the Vale of Gold. So what I'm trying to decide, it's sort of morning, because each hex is a day. So it's going to take me a day to get to the Vale of Gold. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll sort of, I'll spend a little bit of time. Maybe they offer me some food. Maybe they've, hunted recently and have some meat that's on a spit roasting, and they offer me some, and I, have a little bit of wine and sort of refresh myself a little bit. It was a long night in Annuminas, and maybe while I'm doing that, I sort of regale them with what happened. I'm like, hey, to that effect, something's coming. These are the symbols. And maybe I should bring that stuff back. So maybe Hadant and I, we're all sort of gathered around eating, and, I'm telling him, and would Hadant know? I think Hadant is a pretty experienced warden. I'm not that experienced, as I said at the beginning when I was back in my fellowship quest, like, I'm sort of new to this and sort of making inroads into the bond that the wardens have. Obviously Hadant has seen some things, and that's made him want to take a step back. And so he's like, yeah, no, the Edmords, I've definitely patrolled up there. I've definitely scouted, and I know some of what you're talking about. And he sort of looks confused. He's like, that's not what I would have expected. That's not what I would have. Sure, troubles are coming, but why would, a warband from the Etten Wars travel all this way? And, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but that seems to be part of the case. He's like, okay. And so, so we have that whole thing as we eat and, make sure I'm restocked on my supplies. And then I head out. And I'm trying to think of how this is going to go. It's going to take me one day. So maybe what I do is maybe I leave the next morning. So let's do another weather check. 10 down 2. So it looks like, oh man, okay. So it looks like there's a bit of a 2 and what did I roll? 3, so that's going to be a 2. So the temperature's really warming up. Starting to get like, maybe unseasonably warm. As far as the wind goes, you see the range is 0 to 2, and I rolled a 2, so it'd be a breeze. So the wind is staying roughly the same. Yeah, so we make our way, and maybe the way I'm going to sort of picture it is, it's sundown. At the end of the day, I'm starting to come to the edge of the Vale of Gold. Now, I try to be consistent, but I don't recall exactly. Let's do this. Activate. I think I was using something like this but maybe not. I don't know. So this is sort of like the dwarf camp, and it's starting to. They're starting to be built up. It's not quite this picture is built up more than I picture it, but maybe, but they have made some progress. And yeah, so as I'm arriving, before I even can see the camp, I sort of smell smoke. I can smell smoke, filtering through the air. And I can tell it's coming from up ahead. I can tell the direction I'm heading is the direction the smoke is coming from. So my first instinct is to like, oh my God, is everybody in, and to run, but I calm myself for a second. And I sort of shed my pack, and I sort of go into stealth mode a little bit. I don't know if it'll matter, but let's just do a stealth check just to have it. A failure, rolled a 9. So again, it's not like I knowingly tripped and fall and blah, 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 but I just to have that if I need it, that I did fail. Okay. So as I start to get closer, I'm sort of going from, cover to cover, thinking that I'm trying to be stealthy. I get to the camp and I see that whatever had been built, the tents, the starting of, buildings, the starting of a hall, it's all been burned down. It's all embers. It's not like that. It's a conflagration in progress. It's just the fire is mostly burned out. I sort of take a moment and I look around, and I don't sense anyone. I don't sense what's going on in terms of like activity from anyone moving. So I kind of come out of cover and I start carefully stepping into the camp, and I see the bodies of the dwarves that were here, that I'd seen when I'd last visited. It looks like there's been a fight. A lot of them have wounds that are typical of like an axe or a sword strike. Some have arrows, stuck in them. And I'm trying to look, I'm like, okay, but the thing I start to notice, and there's also, there's crows that have already started coming and, picking at them on the ground. And I start to notice that every single corpse has something in common, though, and that is that their right hand has been amputated, has been hacked off. It's not like a clean, it's been like... And, but the one thing is that, and also I see, you know what, I should do another roll. Let me see what this would be. Awareness, hunting, awareness. Let's try awareness. Success with a 14. I see, obviously, dwarven footprints in the dirt and the mud, but I also see orc footprints in the mud, and it looks like I'm having trouble determining how many there were, but it wasn't just like one or two. Yeah. So, but the one thing I don't see is I don't see Flonar. I'm not that I recognize all these dwarves, but I would recognize Flonar, and I don't see him, anywhere to be found here in the camp. And so I get maybe hopeful. And since I don't hear any movement, I don't see any activity of anyone alive, I just sort of like, Flonar, brother. And I start to sort of make my way through the camp, trying to find out where he is. And after a few moments, I realize that there's like a little bit of a blood trail. Some of the footsteps, lead away from the camp, maybe to the northwest. And I can tell from the tracks that there's the orc's footsteps, and there's also like a dwarf, like running. And let me see if I've got anything for this. I don't know if this is exactly going to be right, but just to give it a little zhuzh. But like, what I'm looking for isn't quite this. It's more like I wanted some ruins, but let's try this. So let's say not too far, the hills are, populated with like ruins of, when Annuminas was a, thriving city. Maybe there's some elvish ruins as well. So maybe to the northeast, to the northwest, there's, some of these ruins. And as I come up to here, again, I'm trying to be careful, trying to be quiet, still not seeing anything. Yeah, there's just like, just to give an idea. So I see like Flonar's body sort of chained to like the pillar in the center of the ruins. I see surrounding him a lot of dead orcs. So to me, it looks like Flonar went down swinging. And so maybe there's like half a dozen dead orcs surrounding him. But eventually he was overwhelmed. And yeah, he was bound to this central pillar. And there his body is sort of lifeless. Wounded, clearly tortured, and lifeless. Yeah, he's been killed. And so I approach the body again very carefully, trying to be quiet. And, for a moment, I'm like, oh, Flonar. And I, take a moment as well. Not that I knew him, but I'm not callous. I'm not an animal. This isn't a fate you would wish upon anyone, so I start, looking him over, and I notice that there's a chain around his neck. Let me see if it'd be lore. Let me see if I can do a quick lore check. I don't know if this is... I think I'm going to get an automatic success because I'm rolling Gandalf symbols on the D12. So it's an automatic success, even though I didn't roll that well. Actually, I would have rolled fine. It's just it's an automatic success. So I recognize that the chain around Flonar's neck is made out of mithril. And so it looks like it'd been hacked out a little bit, but it didn't break. Of course, it wouldn't break because that's how mithril works. If it's a chain like that, I believe... Again, I'm pulling a lot of this from Tales from the Lone Lands. Since it's a mithril chain, you sort of need the secret to its magical clasp. You can't just cut it off. You can't just open it. It requires knowledge of how it works magically. And some of the wounds I'm starting to realize are around his neck, like they were trying to cut his head off to get the chain off. Like they're really trying to get this chain off. And so something about this, and so I examine it more. And so, yeah, there's some pretty gruesome wounds around his neck. And so I examine it more. And I realize that at the end of the clasp, there's like a fragment of just iron. And that part has been sort of broken off. That part gave way. So whatever was attached to the chain is maybe a little damaged, but it's gone. The orcs definitely got it. So yeah. So that's what I find here outside at the Vale of Gold. The entire encampment is gone. Everyone's been killed. They died in a fight with orcs. Flonar went down swinging, like I said, tried to hold his own, took a lot of them with him, but in the end was overwhelmed, bound to this pillar, tortured, killed, and something was taken from him. And so I kind of, I touched the broken fragment of the end of his necklace in my hand, and I just sort of let it go. Because I know I'm not going to be able to take it off. So, and then I turn around and head back to the Vale of Gold proper. And I do one last check for survivors. I was pretty certain the first time that nobody survived, and I make 100% sure this time on my way through. And yeah, there's no survivors. And then I see that the footprints took off to the east. So I'll bring this map back up. So the footprints sort of took off in this direction. And so I'm not sure what to do. Obviously, this is relatively recent. The fires have burned out for the most part, but they're still hot. They're still smoking. There's still bits of flames. And so I'm going to have to make a choice. Do I go after the attackers, or do I return to Flonar and report what I found? Obviously, there's, in order to overwhelm this camp, it had to have been a decent number of orcs to win this fight. So I'm not sure Not sure what to do. So what I'm going to do, and so I know, again, these solo sessions are always a little short, so I'm going to stop here for now, like as I sort of decide what to do with this choice. Thank you very much, everybody. Check this out. Again, this is Black Lodge Trivia Night. I'm Art. This has been the One Ring 2nd Edition from Free League Games, the Strider mode. If you're watching this, you've already found our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if this is your thing. We appreciate everybody who checks these videos out. If you prefer audio versions of this, just search for Black Lodge Trivia Night wherever you get your podcasts, and we should come up there with an audio version. Obviously, there's CRPG stuff going on. I'm doing Lord of the Rings Online, the book quests. I've been doing some Fable. And I got hooked into Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. I tried to just have 2 things going on. But I've been really dying to try Fall of Avalon for a while, and when it released officially, I was like, oh, let me give it a shot. Let me record it. I was like, oh, this is actually really fun. So I sort of maybe overbooked myself a little bit on the CRPGs, so there might be too much of that coming in the meantime, but what are you going to do, right? So thanks again to everybody who checks this out. We really appreciate it. If you want, jump into our Discord. And yeah, I keep saying it. We really appreciate it, but we genuinely do. So thanks again. Take care. The in-session music was provided by Tabletop RPG Music and composed by Ian Fisher. You can find the Patreon at www.patreon.com/tabletop RPG music. That's all one word.